Happy Thursday, everybody.
Hey, Brandon. Hey, folks. Howdy. Happy Thursday.
Trying to figure out how to give people greetings. It's not like the good morning or good afternoon when everybody's in different time zones. So I just go with a happy Thursday and hope that nobody crossed the date line on me.
Yes, that's a good approach.
See, Joseph joining us today. I think you're new. Have you been to any of our meetings before?
Mostly from the background when Tianan joins the meeting. So since he's out for a few months, I'm joining now. Just to listen in.
Well, thanks for substituting in for him. Today might be a pretty light agenda. I can give the quick rundown from the other working group. We should probably have a link in here for that one, so people can easily find it. Let me find the link first, and then I'll share both of these. That's just our regular HackMD, but I threw up there at the top, just under all the dial-in numbers and everything. The auth working group has a link to theirs as well. This week was pretty light on that side. We were mostly just getting some procedural things knocked out. And so I've got the new repo created, not specifically me, but put the request in, they created it for us, and I threw in a few generic out-of-the-box entries in there. I don't know if we technically had enough approvals on that. So anybody that is listed as one of the owners on that one, if you haven't already approved that original governance setup PR after it got merged, feel free to go in there after the fact and hit approve on that one. Or deny, we can talk about it. Other than that, so that there was also a logistical change on that one. We were originally meeting at this time 30 minutes later on Tuesday. And so 30 minutes after now on Tuesday, and we bumped it back to basically being at this time. So on the top of the hour, instead of trying to like bridge a couple different meeting times so people can jump in and out. It was getting a little confusing there. So for anybody that had this on your calendar, this time on Tuesday is when we meet for that working group. Otherwise, I think the only thing I'm looking towards is just kind of general, how are folks doing with 1.0 implementations, questions, challenges, things coming up? I think I saw Oris mention middle of August, I think, for your implementation. Did I read that right, Toddy? Or have you seen that one?
Yep, that I think is the current plan.
Okay.
Yeah, if we don't hit some roadblocks, but I doubt it.
I've been following the issue over there for the feedback request, and so I add a little bit of feedback that I could of what the questions they're asking on how best to implement this stuff. So hopefully that's one that I'm really looking forward to, because I would like to make sure that we've got two different people trying to implement this and coming out with the same conclusion in the end, ideally.
Yep, I will. I wasn't tracking very closely this one, but we had a discussion yesterday with some of the ORAS members. So I'll be looking at that closely for the next 2 weeks, and I'll collect any feedback.
Awesome.
Share here.
And on the other implementation, Ram, I think you and I have gone back and forth a few times. I think last was me saying won't fix. Anything, any new thoughts from you on supporting on that side of how you're creating that artifact? Not sure if he's in a place right now that he can come off mute.
No, I think let's at least personally, I'm leaning towards the artifact type going forward. I think that that should be the recommendation going forward. So,
for what you're creating, I would push you in that direction. I would say that artifact type isn't necessarily the one I would say is automatically preferred for everybody, but for something where you're creating it without a dedicated config blob, that's my recommendation. But there are things like Helm charts out there a day that have a dedicated config blob. I don't think there's any necessary need to say convert off of that and go to artifact type. They've already got something that works.
Makes sense. That actually makes sense. It's fine.
Folks are slowly trickling in here as I've got no agenda at all. So if anybody has other points that they want to make, questions, something like that, feel free to let me know. So the meeting for that one, you're asking about the working group there, Rob.
Yeah, sorry, yes. The time and the weekday.
Yeah, it
because
is.
the calendar or Google, unfortunately, I can't open it from my workplace. There are issues.
It is basically copy this meeting and put it on Tuesday.
Oh, okay.
So same time, same meeting, Zoom call and all that stuff, just on Tuesday.
Perfect. Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Yep. I always avoid saying a specific time because everybody's in a different time zone. Anybody else have questions, comments, open issues? I did not do any homework for this meeting, so I don't have anything of my own right now. Feel free to throw them out.
So I'm guessing we are waiting for more feedback for the disk spec and image spec changes, and that's it. We wait till August 18th, I suppose.
That is my big thing. I'm also kind of glancing through some of these old pull requests and whatnot to see if there's anything else in there that we need to talk about. But yeah, I want to see a few people implement it. And I think the stuff that you and I have been doing, like when we're going back and forth on the artifact type field, that's helpful. That shows that multiple of us are trying to get this to work together and running into issues and where those issues are. And is there any spec change that needs to come out of that or not? I think for that one, maybe not, but you never know. Just in time, glancing back at old issues and things like that. I did throw in the massive linter. Thanks to everybody that took a look at that one. So now image spec has my name all over pretty much every file everywhere because I linted the whole thing. Which means I'm going to get blamed on everything now. But those are the joys. You need to go through at some point. I need to submit a PR and clean out stuff like the RKT project. Rocket, I think is how I like to pronounce it. Which no longer is, it's been archived for a long while. So I think we've got references to projects out there that no longer exist. Does anybody have strong feelings for how those should be referred to in the future? Kind of thinking like maybe an emeritus or just have an archived implementation section that separates things that are no longer really maintained from the active projects when we look at different implementations of what we have out there. I hear no strong opinions on anything there. You have one other one. This one looks like it might be worth chatting about a little bit. I'll throw the link over in our meetup notes, meeting notes. And I'll drop it over here, and I'll even share a screen on this one so folks can follow along on this one. There was one request. Get my screen share set up here first. One request for another header. And the thought here was that when you pull a manifest, it could give you an indication of whether or not you should be checking to see if there are any refers for that manifest. So that would be another change on distribution for registries to implement. It would be an optimization. So I don't think there is a, if registries don't do it, I think we could even say should on this instead of must for just the absent field. To me, it's useful because when I start querying something, I'll have a single index that has 7 platform-specific manifests. I'm just throwing numbers out here. 6 artifacts on each one of those manifests. So I've got multiple SBOMs, signatures, all this kind of stuff. You've got a lot of these. If I do a deep copy of that from one registry to another, that actually starts growing exponentially. There tend to be a lot of these requests. And so I've got 42 different things that I'm looking at, just at the artifact level and the index, and none of those have refers, but I still check the manifest to see if each one of those has a refer. And so that would be a lot of API calls that I would eliminate if I'm doing that copy, if I don't have to check each one of those.
This is actually a good enhancement.
It does mean that registries need to keep track when they're returning a manifest that they need to add this extra header in there just to say it's not there. There were other thoughts in this of saying like a present header. I didn't see as much value for that one. And another one saying give a list of artifact types. I think there's a trade-off in overhead between that one of whether or not that's valuable or not. Ram, I heard you getting ready to jump in there though, so go ahead.
No, this is a good announcement, except that the registry side has to do a little bit more work, but that's all right.
Yeah, on every single manifest return. That's the downside of this.
Yeah, that's okay. So
Yeah.
I mean if the clients are going to be interested in referrers as the general case, then this optimization makes sense. If the clients don't care about referers, then this will become unnecessary work on the registry side. But that's a call to make.
Since it's an optimization, this could be something that a registry looks at after a while and says, hey, we're starting to get a lot of these refer API requests. We can add this header and it'll knock out 70% of them. That might be a thing registries look at on their side.
Okay.
So my strong feeling is that I like the absent header. The thing that says the registry says, hey, this doesn't exist. I don't have as much of a use for the present header. If it doesn't, if it does have refer, I'm going to query for it if this header is not there, whether or not it's because the registry doesn't support that or because, I think it should be there one way or another. I'm just going to query for it. The only thing it might help with is that it potentially could trigger me to know that I need to do a quick fallback to the tag instead of trying to query the refers. But for me, I'm caching on the client side. So maybe that's a question more for like the ORS team. If you see there might be a value in knowing the present header. And again, I realize I'm probably throwing this on you when you haven't had a chance to do the homework on this, but what they're saying is every time you do a manifest fetch, you pull back the OCI index of some image you're looking at, it would have a header at the top that says OCI refers for this index he just pulled. He had like the present and the absent field. And I'm thinking, I get value from the absent. I don't get a lot of value from the present. But if it's valuable for other people, I don't want to say, no, don't do that.
I mean, it's just equivalent to it not being there. Like the client's going to do the same whether or not it's there.
Yeah, if it is present, or if the registry doesn't support the header, I'm going to query it either way.
Yeah. So having like that list instead of which artifacts might be more useful than just there are some. Which types of artifacts might be more
interesting. And that
interesting.
was where I was trying to figure out how valuable is that versus the overhead of generating that. And that's a question for registry implementations and clients on their side as well. It would be useful to a client that knows I've got a query for just a signature. To know that, hey, there is a signature out there for this thing. Maybe it's a signature I'm looking for, maybe it's not. But it tells you that you've got something else you can query for. The reason I'm more hesitant on that is when I'm thinking of a client that does this, a lot of times the client doing the signature check is not the client that did the manifest pull. You'll pull a manifest, then you'll have a separate admission controller or something else out there that says, okay, now I know this is the digest that you're trying to pull. Let me query and see if there's a signature for that. And it's kind of two separate calls, or it's going to jump directly to the refers API and find out whether or not it exists. So open question for me, just thinking of where the trade-offs there in terms of how much that's going to cut the overhead versus not. So that'll be another interesting thing for implementations to consider on their side of, will this remove a bunch of API calls that you were making before? Hey there, Sajay. Showing up just, we're about to close up almost. Oh. Not quite, but getting close.
I'm sorry.
I'll drop this. No. I just don't want us all run away when you're getting ready to show up for the meeting. That would be sad. I'll drop this link in there since you missed this one. Chatting about this guy right now. And the answer that I threw into this one was that I think the absent header in this one is super useful, but a lot of the other ones, I'm not sure of the value. And so while you're reading through this, if you're looking at other headers in there, to think through, would some of these other options there save you API calls from some of your own implementations? Toddy.
Hey, sorry, I was multitasking, and so this looks a lot to me as the capabilities header that we were discussing months ago, right?
A little different. This is not so much saying the registry supports the API call. This is saying for the manifest you just pulled, there actually is a refer that points to it. So if I go out and pull Alpine Latest right now, Alpine Latest would say, no, there's nothing out there for this because nobody's pushed an SBOM or a signature for that image.
Okay, sorry, I misunderstood that.
No.
Then
it's a good question. If people are interpreting good questions, it means I'm not explaining it well either. But yeah, the goal is here for clients that are querying this stuff, if we can eliminate some of these API calls on their side. And so the registry can give the client some kind of feedback that says, here's what you can expect. You can skip some of these other API calls because it just isn't there. So don't even bother with it.
I'm trying to think how, so I understand how I'm gonna use it, but I'm thinking of some of the scenarios that actually we are working on. And for how long I should keep that information on the client side to think that there are no referrers, because like 30 seconds after I make the call, there may be a referrer that shows up. And like, yeah, it's, I need to think through the scenarios a little bit, and I'll go through the issue and maybe add my comments to it.
I've got some of the same
But
thoughts
yeah,
on my
I
side.
understand. Yeah, I understand the intention. Sorry.
No worries. I got some of the same questions on my side of how to implement like a client-side caching for some things. Probably one of my next features I'm going to look at adding, at least for some of the manifest, and for right now, just in memory, not on disk. And so your exact same question there of how long do I assume before I go back and query that refers list is definitely on my head.
Do we want to use any HTTP primitive like link with rel is equal to related? Because these are related artifacts to the manifest, right?
Keep fleshing that one out for me. I'm trying to follow where you're going with that. You're on mute.
I'm just trying to see if I can find the HTTP specification for, I think it's, we can do a rel with a relation.
And would you want to use that instead of saying that there is a refer, so you're going to give them a URL to query the refer directly? Or are you trying to use that to say these are the kinds of refers that exist?
I think if you can give them a URL to query the referrers, that would follow according to spec, but I'm not thought it through fully. And
Okay. Yeah, I'd have to go back through some of the HTTP specs myself on that one. It kind of follows some of our other queries that we've got out there right now. When you push a manifest, we've got a response that comes back that says, hey, I received your manifest, and oh, by the way, I also understood that this was a refer, and here was the subject that you include in there. Here's the digest of that, so that clients know they don't have to go back through the fallback method of pushing a tag and everything. So it's following a very similar model to what we've already documented for the push, which is one more reason I'm relatively comfortable with at least part of this. So if nothing else, I see Toddy saying he's got to do some more thinking. See Sajay frantically querying a bunch of HTTP specs and thinking through it. If nothing else, I put this all in your heads for now to give it some more thought, because I think this would be useful. And if we at least did the absent header, the OCI refers absent, it's just an optimization. And so I think it's something we could say as a should. So it's one of those use cases where I think we can add that late without breaking too many things. And people can add to their registries if and when they want to. And I already heard Ram say he liked the idea, so I'm hoping Zod will be a leading implementer of that if we decide to add it.
yeah, I think it's definitely short-circuiting whether we even have to look at referrers, right? I think that's fine.
Yeah. A lot of this was focused on, hey, nobody's using refers yet, and so there might be a lot of calls we're going to skip on this, but once people start adding refers, he was thinking, well, it's going to be, everything's going to have a refer, so why do we add the header? And that's kind of where I took the follow on there of saying, well, it gets a lot more complicated when you add refers, because you can have refers on refer. I can have an SBOM out there with an external signature attached to it as another refer. And so now I have to start querying these things at multiple levels, and the problem doesn't get better when everybody's got a refer. It gets a whole lot worse in terms of the number of API calls that I was making. So short circuits I like. So that was my one contribution for the day. I created an issue out there and thought that one might be interesting to chat about. Have I missed any other issues folks want to chat about? Any other important things? Otherwise, we can always end early. I'm not opposed to calling it a day and giving people back 30 minutes. I think everybody is on summer break mode and wants their 30 minutes back. So on that note,
we do.
On that note, have a good rest of your Thursday, rest of your week, and we'll catch back up here next week. More OCI fun.
All right, thanks for
See you, folks. Bye.
Yeah, Brandon, next week I'll put the any blockers on the release on the agenda, just to kind of give a heads up, add it to the agenda for next week.
Yeah, Toddy and I were chatting before you came in. I heard ORAS was looking at middle of August, and that was something I'm really looking forward to seeing, the comparison between Reg client, ORAS, all on SOT. Hopefully we can get another registry out there that can say, even if we get a private registry like ACR, providing their conformance results in like a draft state or whatever, however they want to provide it, censored out details, something that just says, that shows, hey, we actually ran this against our registry and we got it to turn all green. That would be useful to me.
That sounds good.
So, all right, folks, have a great rest of your week.
Bye.